Well, welcome everyone to IBMI Education Week from Fortra. We're excited to be with you here today. This event is being recorded. You will be able to listen back to all of it or parts of it. This is a 3-day series of IBMI education from Fortra. So thank you for joining us early. We have a great lineup of different presenters for each of the different days, along with a couple other guests that aren't even on this slide. First of all, one of our presenters, Sandy Moore. Sandy Moore, what do you do for Fortra? Are you there, Sandy?
Gotta have that mute button on. Sandy Moore, yes. Hi, Tom. Senior Solutions Engineer. I work with our PowerTech security software line, helping customers with finding the solutions to best meet their current security needs.
Awesome. Welcome, Sandy. And then over to Amy Williams. What do you do for Fortra?
Good morning, Tom. So I'm a senior security consultant, so I actually get to work with our customers on remediating the challenges and hardening their systems to make them more secure.
So you do a lot of hands-on security work. Excellent. Yeah. And Greg Schmidt, what do you do for Fortra?
Yeah, I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Fortra, and I work on the document and forms automation side, and then also on the SQL business intelligence side, and really helping companies with their processes and streamlining things.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Greg. And then over to Chuck Losinski.
Good morning, everyone. I am the Director of Technical Solutions, where I focus mostly on our automation tools around IBMI. I've been providing educational services and educating our clients on the platform now for 25 years at Fortra, formerly Help Systems.
And you're heavily involved with our local Q user, which is an education user group around the IBM platform. Yep. And finally, Tom Huntington, I'm our Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions at Fortra, longtime member of the company, responsible for the IBMI Marketplace survey that we've been putting out for 10 years. I work with a lot of our customers. I probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 one-on-one calls with customers. As a matter of fact, this entire group averages probably about that every year as we talk to customers on IBMI and all different industries about cybersecurity, automation, BI, and document management. So speaking of that marketplace survey, this whole 3-day webinar is focused around that marketplace survey and the results from that, and why we're coming to you this week to talk about these various topics. The IBMI Marketplace survey in its 10th year has provided insight and knowledge about what's happening in this market, and IBM uses this technology, this results, and of course we do, and then many of our partners and even competitors around the globe use it. It's meant to be for everybody. But with that said, as we look at this survey results and the top concerns, Sandy, why is IBMI cybersecurity #1 on the list?
Yeah, you know, Tom, it's been evolving over the years. IBMI was always considered not a very secure platform, and not a lot of attention was paid. There's a firewall in place, and I'll talk about more about that tomorrow. But really, cybersecurity is the #1 concern for most organizations, and the IBMI is the core server. So it's really just, there's been a huge shift in making that the focus and deciding that they need to really protect the crown jewels. So I think that's reflected in the survey here.
Awesome. And then Amy, I know you do a lot with cybersecurity too, but in a lot of cases you're helping people with compliance and regulations. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely there is more attention being paid to the IBMI platform by the different auditing firms. So PCI has kind of gone by the wayside as people have gotten to tokenization and moving those credit card processes off the IBMI. But now SOX and GDPR and HIPAA, because there's a lot of health organizations that use IBMIs in their back end. So compliance is a place to start. It doesn't make you secure, but it certainly gets people to start paying attention to some things that they don't normally to get them more secure.
Very good, very good. And you'll be sharing some of those stories coming up tomorrow. And then Greg, who's going to wrap out day 3 with variety of topics. What are you seeing customers doing for modernization? That has really creeped up on the top concerns.
Yeah, a lot of times modernization, lately has been, around, some of the data access strategies, right? So from two different angles, I'm going to cover on Thursday. The first one around business intelligence, and the second one around document and workflow management within organizations. And some of the trends that we're seeing, you might see that, some of the 13% might seem low in there, but you also got to put into consideration some of the, modernizing processes, right? And modernizing applications and business automation kind of into that mix as well. So I'll be covering, some of those different things that we're seeing and really how to, replace some of the older strategies and older solutions that might be being used out there, and start that creation process on there as well. And then another session so I'll be doing that in session 1 and 3 on Thursday. And then the other session on day 3, session 2 is going to be, we have a guest presenter coming in, Brian May from Profound Logic, and he will be discussing, the topic around modernization of AI strategies for your IBMI. So that should be a great presentation from Brian on that topic. But we'll get into, I'll say, deeper strategies and stuff like that around there, and standardization and ways to be able to, have users and the business accept, these strategies and use them.
Yeah, that sounds really like a very interesting day of sessions. And then, Chuck, what about IBMI skills and automation? What are you hearing from customers?
Yeah, Tom, thanks for asking. That's going to be the focus of the bulk of today's presentation. It's really a two-pronged issue. First of all, we've got people who have inherited the platform and really don't know what direction to look for help. So we're going to talk about that today. And then the other prong is we've got management or the business looking for human capital. Where can we find people? How can we build up people with knowledge of the platform? So that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time today discussing, and as well as automation, because in many cases, what companies are looking to do is backfill some of the human capital with automation tools and processes and techniques in order to accomplish the business goal.
Very good. Looking forward to working with you on that. And then I'm going to wrap it up, and we have a mid section, and sprinkled throughout, we'll talk a little bit about high availability and disaster recovery. And 63% is a big concern of yours out there. And what we'll cover is what are some of your options for you in that space and bring you up to date. And we have a guest, Brian Nordland, who's on the Fortra team, works on Power HA and works on high availability technology. So a great leader, and he's an IBM champion, and so very knowledgeable of what's happening in the IBMI marketplace. So I want to thank all of you for joining the kickoff. Let's roll into our first polling question, and we want to know what are your top concerns? And I accidentally closed that. Okay.
There we go.
Let me just see if I can reopen it. I can't. Oh no. Well, I apologize. I clicked too quick and I closed the polling question. So sorry about that. We're just going to move on from that one. We kind of know already from the marketplace survey the top concerns. Here's an agenda for the next few days. Today we'll be doing, of course, and I inherited an IBMI. Now what? Exploring your HADR options, why automation is trending, how to get started. And day 2, we dive into cybersecurity. The layers of cybersecurity for IBMI, the IBMI security real world success stories that we've seen. We have a panel discussion going there. And then we're going to watch a layered security approach in action as one of the sessions. So a lot on cybersecurity on day 2. And then day 3 is modernization. And we're also going to talk about AI strategy and modernization around business intelligence, document management, security, and the process enforcements, which again, many of us are struggling with, how to handle documents and data output. And it all ties together when you think about it. So very exciting, big agenda here. And Session 1, we're going to roll right into session 1, which is I inherited an IBMI, or, and worse yet, right, Chuck, an AS400. So
Yeah.
let's turn it over to you, I guess, on this one to
Sure.
kick off some introductions.
Yeah. So, Tom, we this is something that's obviously near and dear to our heart because we have a super solid IBMI staff here at Fortra, and none of us knew IBMI when we first got into the business. So that's really the goal of this presentation, is to give you tools that will help you learn the platform, but also if you're looking for talent, how to develop that talent. All right, how to develop that human capital. And so we love to talk about this topic, and it's a big concern, obviously, from the marketplace survey. And Tom and I have been pounding the drum around IBMI for many, many, many years, AS400 before that, and we're super passionate about it. And if you do have any questions that come out of this presentation after the fact, certainly you can reach out. Between the two of us, we have almost probably a century in IT almost.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just about. It's crazy, Chuck. Just from yesterday, 2 conversations. Working with a customer on high availability, and 2 people really. And the one, we had a little break because it was a long call, and the person said, I said, so, well, how long you been with your company? He goes, well, I work part-time. I go, okay. And then we somehow got into the age topic, which you're never supposed to do. I found out he was 78, still working as an IBMI administrator.
Yeah.
Part-time,
Yeah.
and helping train a different person. And then the other story was a company that had written all their own tools, but the 2 people who did it, who were both on the call, are retiring. And they don't know what to do because they're fixed into these tools that nobody else knows how to maintain. So those are
right.
2 sessions that'll be very much so part of the conversation as we move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Super.
Yeah. All right. Enough on that and enough on the video. So let's see if I can't make this second polling question work. There we go. So what's your IT background? Should be the polling question. Are you seeing that, Chuck?
I am.
Oh, it's really weird. It's acting so weird on my end.
All right.
Okay. So what's your IBM background before? I do see it up now. Okay. Very good.
Yep. And we've got kind of a mixture. And Tom, this is what we're seeing when we get into these conversations. It might be, I was the network administrator. Now I've inherited IBMI. A common theme over the years, for many years, has been the development staff has been responsible for the IBMI or the help desk. So it's not a divided administration type.
Or how about the network administrator, right? I mean, the network administrator, their background's going to be routers, switches, and probably Windows and maybe Linux. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm responsible for IBMI. So
yeah, check this out, Tom. Almost 25% of our group came into this world as a network administrator.
Yeah.
Or system admin on another platform, help desk, or maybe they're just in the data center, and guess what? They're quote unquote stuck with the platform. But one thing we've learned in bringing in new talent into the platform is that once you understand the platform, you love it.
Exactly. Very good. Well, let's dive into this a little further, Chuck.
Yeah, so this is what our agenda is. We're going to look at the landscape of the community. We're going to look at what the platform really means, and then we're going to do some educational things around the green screen versus GUI, how to work with commands and menus. Tom's going to talk about getting work done and advanced topics. So, Tom,
let's get rolling. So, this is one of my favorite things. What did we hear when someone inherits IBMI? And these are things that Chuck and I have heard from you all. First thing, IBM, I inherited an AS400. We hear that still yet today, or it might be I series or Series I or whatever. Does anyone else have an IBM I? I hear that often. What are the similarities between Windows or Linux and IBM I? I also help people with that. I kind of actually maybe, what do you want to call it, promote that conversation so I can kind of explain to people where the similarities are, because there are similarities. Is there a future in the IBM I platform? Is there a roadmap, et cetera? So I can't find anything on it. I thought the system was dead. Of course, we hear that. I worked on the AS400 20 years ago, and now I'm back on it again, with a 10-year break in between. Is it still going? Is the environment secure? Can you secure this environment? How about you, Chuck? What are some of the things you hear about?
Well, I certainly get queried on educational topics and being part of a user group, a virtual user group that anybody can join. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And, you mentioned Common a little bit earlier. Great source of education. So we're going to dive into that today. Questions about documentation. Is there documentation on the operating system? Well, of course there is. But, you mentioned homegrown tools as well. And that's another topic that we're going to discuss, the lack of documentation on homegrown tools. Is this good for my career? Well, what we find out is that, this tends to be the core server for the business. And if you understand what's running on the core server, you understand the business. So another topic is no one else wanted this job on our IT team. Occasionally we hear that, but as I
just
mentioned,
heard it last week.
Did you really? Yeah. So, but there's a big turnabout though. Is once people understand the platform, it really becomes part of their DNA, so to speak.
Yeah.
Something I've been dealing with quite a bit in the last 12 months is, why is the system so manual? Well, it is a computer system. It is meant to be automated. In fact, this platform is designed to be automated. People have made it manual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that in part 2. Is it hard to get data out of? No, it's probably the most SQL compliant platform available. And is there a GUI? Well, absolutely. We're going to look at that. And in the past, it's been very green screen, telnet oriented, but there are lots of GUI tools available.
Yeah. So as we saw in our kickoff, the IBM I Marketplace survey points to the fact that you're concerned about IBM I skills, and that's kind of twofold. It's, I don't know where to go for education, or it's more about we're losing some key people. Our developers have retired. We haven't replaced them. And that's an issue too, is that people often wait for them to retire and then they replace them. So, the IBM I world or demographics are somewhat reflected by our IBM I Marketplace survey too, and where people take the survey from. 50% of the marketplace is really kind of the North America markets, then Latin America, and then Europe. Not represented very well here is the Japanese market. There's a big following of IBM I in the Japanese market. So then we also have diversity in industry. You heard myself and Amy talk a little bit about this in the beginning, but banking and finance, there's a lot of banks that run an IBM I, a lot of manufacturing yet, a lot of development that's still being done by various IT software development companies around the globe, a lot of write-ins, a lot of custom code from various industries, distribution, insurance, we see that out there. Healthcare, even government. People don't realize that the various governments, whether local or county type things, or even federal government, use IBM I. And then retail. There's a lot of retail and even utilities that run an IBM I. So it's a very diverse set of customers out there. And I just, for me, 50% of the banks worldwide have IBM I somewhere. And another one is transportation. In the North America anyways, every other semi that goes by you in the back end, IBM I is very critical to that industry. Now, another thing that we have happening in the platform is this changeover in staff and new people coming in, which is, fresh blood is awesome, and it's great to see some of these people up here that I, personally know. Megan Olson from Fortra, of course, and she is one of our rising stars here. And the Rising Star program is part of Tech Channel, which is a online, call it magazine, newsletter. They put out a lot of great articles. You'll see Steve Will writing in there and providing articles. Another interesting, I'll just do a shout out to Josh Banders from Bright Skies. I just chatted with him not too long ago, and he does a daily LinkedIn blog basically on different businesses that are running on IBMI based on a list that he's working on. But he's done several hundred days now of that, which is very interesting. But you'll see these new staff members are working for various companies and really thriving in the IBMI world because they've realized it's just another computer. The other thing we often hear about on IBMI is that it's all RPG or it's COBOL only. And that is so far from the truth today. People are doing open source. People are, of course, have been doing Java for many years. Chuck just mentioned that it's a very SQL compliant platform, and that is also very true. And you can do whatever language you really want on the platform. Yes, unfortunately, there is COBOL out there, and somebody has to take over those platforms, but there's no reason you can't run COBOL and then have Python running next to that and accessing the same database to provide web technology, for example. And then we get into the IBM education initiatives. There's a lot of education out there, and I'm always amazed when people say, hey, I just can't seem to find education. Well, Common puts out many great things, and many of their educations are free to all their members. So they have administrator boot camps, security boot camps, developer boot camps, SQL boot camps, that if you just join Common, even if you don't go to their event, you get all that education for free for your team. And then user groups. There's many local user groups throughout North America, and then globally education in Europe, of course, and a lot of virtual events that are put out. Of course, social media, LinkedIn, places like that, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. There's also the IBMI Community Forum, and there's the Power Systems Academic Initiative. And of course, speaking of that, we want to highlight, Chuck, don't we want to highlight the community colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we've done is we've partnered with the Muskegon Community College, and we're actually on their advisory board. That's where one of our rising stars came, actually two of our rising stars came from, and I think we've got another one in the queue. So there are a number of community colleges, Gateway Technical College, Seneca Polytechnic, and Moraine Community College, that have some IBMI curriculum built into their program. Now, that being said, with the development tools that are available, the Eclipse-based development tools, Visual Studio or VS Code for IBMI, and the new free format RPG, somebody who has learned another language can easily adopt the new RPG and be very productive as long as they're mentored. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Tom, what's your experience been here?
Exactly that. If you don't find somebody from one of these colleges, which if you are looking, you should reach out to them. They're looking for interaction from industry. Really, it's a matter of what tools you put in front of new developers or administrators of the platform. And that determines whether or not you're looked at as a green screen legacy system or not. And, honestly, some companies, there's still really a place for that green screen because they need fast data entry, and that's what their industry's used to. I mean, so you can't knock that. So Chuck, I know you're heavily involved in user groups. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I always like to emphasize, and we all know this, that working in IT, we're in continuing education, and you have to continue your education. You cannot become static. So the user group community is both international as well as US and Canada based. So you can see here there's a long list of international user groups. And I'm sure we have folks listening to us outside the US today. And then in the US and Canada, let's go to the next slide, Tom. As you can see, I've got Q user listed in the upper left-hand corner. It says Minnesota. That's started as a Minnesota user group, Minnesota and Wisconsin, but fully online now. Feel free to check us out at quuser.org. But if you're local to one of these areas, many of these user groups also have face-to-face meetings.
Yeah.
Likewise, all of these are opportunities to network and look for opportunities, whether they're human capital for your business or just to increase your education on the platform. Tom, you've spoken to a number of these user groups over the years.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple ones I'd point out is WMCPA in Milwaukee. They have their conference coming up. I also saw some things from the New UG, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Massachusetts, Boston area. But yeah, these are all very active user groups, and many of their leaders are very active in the IBMI education. Shout out to our Laura Uberall from the Michigan user group, and she is very involved in college level education, academic initiative, placing these students in mentor programs. Those are all things that are going on around the platform, helping to attract talent for you and I, right? Where do I go for a new IBMI programmer? Well, if you're still looking for somebody with, 20 years experience, those are the people that are retiring. You might want to bring in a new set of people and mentor that new talent before you lose that person, before they retire. These are just some tips that we have. Look for, contact, and adopt one of those local four-year technical college. They do have internships they will work with you on. Be open to new techniques and tools. I think Greg's session will be great to share some of his thoughts on modernization and even AI alongside IBMI. But you have monitoring, RPG free format, you got Python, you got PHP, you got Rationale Developer, VS Code. Those are all helpful tools. Chuck, what do you think?
Tom, all these people that are pictured here are Fortra employees. They all focus on IBMI. They did not know IBMI when they came on board for the most part. And so, like you said, they can be mentored, and boy, these guys are awesome.
Yeah, you got developers, you got support people, you got leaders here, et cetera.
Work with you. So continuing education is terribly important. There's a lot of information out there, on certain blog feeds and so forth. And like Jim Buck from Empower Technologies, IempowerTechnologies.com, he says, the problem's not the young guys. They get it. They understand the platform once they've been mentored. All right, as long as you put the right tools in their hands and help them understand the business. I think that's the key too, is really to help them understand what the business is all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So AS what? And that's really what we're here to aim and talk about today, is for those who are new to the platform, a lot of people don't even realize that the IBM Power Server runs potentially 3 different operating systems, or 3 operating systems all at the same time. You got IBM AIX, the Unix version that IBM works on, and then of course Linux and many flavors of Linux. Ubuntu, you got SUSE, you got Red Hat. I mean, all those run in Linux partitions, all on the same platform. As small as as small as a large Windows server up to as big as a mainframe, in the sense of a mainframe. And what comes with this server built in is DB2, of course. It comes and has been, it was part of the System 38 platform, and IBM's carried that forward. So many of us, the AS400 IBMI is really a database server for us. And the cool thing about it is it's scalable. That one server, that one VM can host tens of thousands of staff members using it in your ERP or financial application or retail application or warehouse. I mean, there's customers that are doing it. It's object oriented. So with that, you can secure down to the, well, technically down to the column field level today, but really for the most part, object level security, and you can work with the platform that way. The work management, if you think about work management, it's been on the platform since the System 38 days, and that is a form of virtualization. That is why you can run so many different applications in one VM on IBM I and scale that thing up to be terabytes and terabytes of storage. You have support for internal or external disk. The security is all object level, so you can make this box as securable as you want it to be. And then, of course, I've mentioned scalability over and over again, but adding processors, adding memory, adding storage are all scalable things that are virtualized today, and even supporting things like LPM, logical partition movement, things like that. We've been doing that for years. IBM I is in the cloud, and there's many different providers out there, and a lot of them are private, but you can do public cloud also. But you can't take an IBM I on-premise application and put it into Azure or AWS without having a power server up in that cloud. We do support traditional and open source development languages. And of course, one of the things that I've always liked and appreciate about the platform is it's recoverable, right? And in this day and age, when ransomware threats and all those things, you may have to rely on your backups to recover it. Now, this is kind of the history of IBM I, well, really back to System 38, System 36. We saw the System 3836 come together with the AS400 back in 1988. Along the way, IBM also had the RS6000, which is the AIX derivative. And then with Power 4, they started to combine those two platforms, if you remember the I series, P series, and then System I, System P in 2004. Power 6 is when IBM coined IBM I versus I series. And if you really were to break down these timelines, IBM I has been the operating system longer than it was AS400. And today we sit at Power 10, which came out in 2022. IBM's working on Power 11. We know 7.5's out there, and we know IBM's working on the next release of that. If we look at our roadmap for the operating system, this is available. Just go out and Google it. So for those of you who are like, oh, we're very skeptical. Is there a future in IBM I? Well, your good friend Google can find it for you quite easily. Chuck, over to you to talk library technology.
Yeah, just a quick discussion about the architecture of the database. When I first got into the AS400, it was a very flat organization. Basically, you had libraries and you could have data in libraries, and that was about it. It wasn't a traditional hierarchical file system. All right. So learning things like, IBM libraries typically start with a queue, IBM objects typically start with a queue. That was something that we had to learn about. All right. Now, the operating system has matured. The roadmap was open source. And so the integrated file system was developed initially to be somewhat of a document management tooling, so directories and subdirectories and data and files in those subdirectories. But this is actually, the integrated file system is actually the overarching architecture of the system now, because there are 14 different file systems in the IFS, one of them being the traditional library flat structure, but also you can support Unix type applications in this architecture and so forth. So this is the real beauty of how the operating system and the platform itself can reinvent itself. So additional learning, basic terminology. Some of the things that we learned about as we learned the operating system and the platform: PTF, temporary program temporary fix; IPL, initial program load. What is DASD? DASD, direct access storage device. That's your spinning disk or SSD and so forth. ASP, This is one of the things that Tom taught me about many, many years ago, was the auxiliary storage pool and independent auxiliary storage pools, something that's learned or used more so in things like Power HA, or how we refer to main memory, where the rest of the industry refers to RAM. Tom, any comments about any of the terminology, so to speak?
I mean, there's just some things you're going to have to learn about any platform, but once you get over those, I mean, in reality, it's no different than any other system. I mean, you know, partitioning is a classic example. It's been around for a long time. The other one is like event logs. I always use that, you know, Windows managers, administrators, when I explain that an event log is really QSys Opera on IBMI or QSys Message or Q History. I mean, we have those types of things. They're just called something else.
Right, and don't forget, this is not a legacy platform. It's a legendary platform. It's proven.
It's proven technology, right? Yeah, it's been around for quite a while. Well, let's talk green screen versus GUI. You know, with IBMI, of course, the traditional environment is this green screen, and it's been around for many years. There are many different emulators which you can get from IBMI or other third parties, and it does support Telnet, basic Telnet you can do on the platform, and there are exit points where you can monitor all this activity. But you know, over the years, IBM's recognized that, you know, we can't just have a green screen. So there are browser technology. The Navigator for IBMI can be your administrator tool. You do not have to use green screen. However, I always go back and say most Linux administrators and most Unix administrators use a command or CLI type interface. So long term, if you're going to be a serious administrator, you're probably going to be using the CLI on IBMI too. But as a developer, you know, use the browser. You'll find everything you want in the browser. So IBM reinvented the browser back in September of 2021. They introduced this browser web interface, Navigator for I, or IBMI Navigator for I. And this will give you access to most everything on IBMI. Is it everything? No, it's not everything, but I think for most of you out there, you will find you can see all your active jobs, your subsystems, your job queues, your files, your objects, your message queues, printers, all those things. And they've even added some nice dashboards into those interfaces. So Chuck, over to you. We'll talk menus and commands, and we probably got to keep things rolling along pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that people struggle with, for instance, if they first go to Linux or Unix, is understanding the command structure. So IBM did us all a favor. They created a menu system that stores all the various commands that you might need in your day-to-day administrative work. So we've got a list here of all the various commands, and there's even a master menu of menus called major. And in order to get to a menu, you simply go to a command line and type go and then the menu name. Let's go to the next screen, and you will see the menu shows up in the upper left hand corner, and the go command gets you between menus. So super easy to work with. As far as the command structure itself, it's very logical. Okay, typically it's a 6 to 7 character string of characters, and that's the command. So we have work commands, display commands, copy commands, etc. And they're put together with a prefix and a suffix and possibly a noun, and ultimately that's how you can construct a command. You can also find commands using the work object, or find any object on the system using the work object command. That's at the top. In the lower left, we've got some tips for you. For instance, we all love command prompting. Type in the command F4 and you'll see all the command parameters, and then F9 and F8 will let you go backwards and forwards through the commands that you have entered. As far as finding a command, there's another tip for you. You can just start typing the command like WR, WRK with an asterisk, and it'll show you all the commands that are in your library list that start with that string of characters. That's very helpful. And other things you should learn about, you know, continuous learning. License programs. You can get to those, the license information with the work license INF. Work system status lets you look at storage and memory pool information. Work share pool lets you look at memory and so forth. Work subsystem, Tom's going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about job management and so forth. So these are some go-tos that every administrator or new user on the system should really understand.
Yeah, and you can prompt these and press F1 on all of them. There's help text behind them. IBM's done a great job with that. So one of the things that's always been near and dear to me is work management on IBMI. It to me is something that makes this platform so unique. And I used to teach at Common and talk to people about work management and bring the work management user guide that had the plastic around it, and that was most people's work management guide. They never opened it up. I found early on in my career that if you really want to know about IBMI, go online, find the work management part, which is, by the way, all online, and read through it. You'll find out that you'll learn about what's a job, what's a subsystem, what's a memory pool, what's a thread, what's batch, what's interactive, the different types of jobs, things about running HTTP servers. They're all documented in the work management part. So this is, really the virtualization part within a VM, if you want to call it that. So it's VM within VM for those of you who are Windows type or Linux people. For those on IBMI, it's a partitioning capability within a partition. It's a place to do work. So a subsystem controls the resources that your jobs, your threads run in. And there's the ability to create new subsystems. You don't have to just have one. You can have as many as you want. You can start them up when you basically reboot or IPL your system. You can end them for backup reasons or whatever else you may need for maintenance. You can modify where jobs run, the number of memory pools, the memory pool sizes, the activity levels. And a subsystems is just another object on the system. So talked a lot about virtualization. Here's some commands you can use: work subsystem, work active job, or you can go through the new Navigator for I and go that way. On your box, you'll find a lot of common subsystems. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here, but typically we tell customers that you do want to be granular in your subsystems. If you have a very scaled up type server where you have lots of users, you're probably going to have more subsystems and have different jobs running in different subsystems for different types of work. You should be segregating that work into different memory pools, whether it's batch, communications, spooling, interactive type things, HTTP servers. They can all be in their own memory pools so that you don't have impact one over the other. And then, of course, to start up a subsystem, you just run one of those commands called start subsystem. Most of you have it compiled in your startup program. There's a bunch of system values where you can get at Q startup program. I was just helping a customer yesterday with that. When you start your subsystems, we allocate the memory pools. We run pre-start jobs. So it's kind of like, again, services or daemons from other platforms. These pre-start jobs start up. These auto start jobs start up, and they just are never-ending jobs that continue to run. Your subsystem may or may not allocate interactive workstations or job queues and communication devices. And then, of course, you're ready to rock and roll on the platform and start using all those things. So it's a beautiful thing. With every IBMI system, you have jobs. These jobs are individual things that are processes that are running an application, whether it's batch or an interactive user or an HTTP server thread that's running on your system. They all have the ability to control the work that they use, the priority they run at. They update the history on start and stop information as we see below here, and you have many different types of jobs. So just some advanced topics here that we're going to roll into. Cybersecurity and high availability. Amy and Sandy are going to dive much further into that, and I'm going to talk shortly on the high availability topic here, and we'll roll into that. So then, Chuck, what about cybersecurity regulations?
Yep, so out of the marketplace survey, GDPR, Sarbanes-Oxley, and of course the data security standards came out as numbers 1, 2, and 3. So it's part of our environment. We've got that type of data on the system, and we must comply with these. And likewise, if we don't, you might end up with not being able to provide service to your customer because they require that you provide this level of compliance.
Yeah, and less customers have no regulation. You can see that's at 23%. I think when we started the survey 10 years ago, that number was about 40%.
Yeah. So one of the services that we offer is a free service. It's called the security scan, and we check up on 6 different areas of your IBMI. This is a very lightweight check, meaning you don't have to install anything on IBMI. It's a tool that's run from your Windows desktop. A consultant will be there, Amy, Sandy, or someone else will be there with you when you run this, and we provide you with a report card of the results. And then we'll help you digest the results. You can keep that and potentially show it to somebody who can maybe provide funding.
Yeah, we've been doing that, Chuck, for 20 years now, which is hard to believe. The other thing to think about from the survey is, methods of high availability. And, I'm not going to go really, really deep in this section here, but the beauty of IBMI is it is recoverable. And the beauty of IBMI is it's also something that you can back up. And you can do that in several different forms. You can do disk-to-disk type backups. You can do virtual tape libraries. You can still do tape. There's a lot of people out there doing tape. You can do data replication using high availability techniques. We have people that do backup data to the cloud. So this is all things that we see from the survey. Now on IBMI, there is one of those handy dandy save menus. You just type in go save. And then if you really don't know and you inherited an IBMI, you can see option 21, save entire system. All right. In order to do that, you got to get everybody off the system. But if you don't have one of those, you need to take one of those. You should be doing that minimum once a year, save the entire system. But reality for many of us, we should be doing that every single month. Some people do it quarterly. Some people only do it after they've done major upgrades. But then all your libraries and your files and programs can all be saved. And we also like to include a little handy chart to kind of explain what each of these different menu options get you. Option 21 saves the entire system. Option 22 is saving license and turtle code and all the IBM libraries. There's a save sec data, save config, SAV command, and then individual save live commands. End of the day, if you don't understand this area, look around. There's a lot of education on backup and recovery. I got a great blog I wrote many years ago, still very, very germane, about checking and how to audit whether or not you have a good backup. So Brian and I are going to be talking, Brian Nordland and I are going to be talking about high availability in just a little bit. One of the forms that's been around since really System 38 days is journaling-based replication. Over the years, IBM's made it easier by adding in technology into the operating system called remote journaling. So now, as a HA provider with like our Robot HA product, we can set up journaling locally, create the remote journal, and then the journal transactions automatically flow through the operating system, and we can apply your database on that remote system. So with that, many different vendors help people out with doing what we call logical-based or journal-based replication. That is not new technology. And the other thing that's been out for 15 years is hardware-based replication and a technology called Power HA. Chuck talked earlier about ASPs. For many years now, 2 decades at least, there's been technology called Independent Auxiliary Storage Pool. And basically, it's like many other platforms, you're separating the operating system from your business applications and the data. And this will work with internal or external storage. And again, we're going to dive greater detail on this. There's many different flavors, or there are a few different flavors, I should say, of Power HA. But this is technically technology sold by the IBM channel, and the Fortra company actually works on this technology in the background for the market. And then, of course, there are many IBMI resources that we've talked about today that I highly recommend. The IBM community, the common.org in North America, common Europe, and of course Europe, Tech Channel, IT Jungle, MC Press is still out there, PowerWire is another newsletter. There's an incredible iShow by Peg Tuttle. Tuborn has his Built on Power newsletter. We got other independent things like Charlie Garino's iChimes and so forth. There are many different things that you can find out on LinkedIn also, and of course, don't forget about all those user groups out there. Of course, at Fortra, we have a lot of solutions that can help you out in these areas too: backup and recovery HA, document management, cybersecurity monitoring, business intelligence, capacity, and automation. Chuck, I know you've been monitoring the Q&A in the background. Any questions or any additional things from there before we move on to our next session of today's webinar?
Yeah, no specific questions. I've been responding to and sharing some of the information out there. For instance, from Michael Mayer. He's one of our good community folks who shares a lot of information out there on the web, and we really do appreciate his efforts in that regard.
Yeah, Michael has a website too that he maintains too, and we got to remember, Chuck, to get that into that article there. So
yep.
All right, so I think you get a little break here. Actually, we're gonna give everybody a little break here for just 5 minutes. It is 11:51. I'm gonna come back at 11:55, so you're just gonna hear hopefully not much of anything. So just hang in there. We'll take a little, I guess, as they say in the industry, bio break or coffee break, and we'll come right back. And Brian, are you with me?
I am here.
Excellent. Great to have you join in early. Just a minute here before we get started.
I'm excited to be here.
That's good. Congratulations again on your IBM champion status.
Thanks, Tom.
I did advertise 5 minutes. I will wait just a moment yet here. Okay, Brian, I advertised 5 minutes. I think we're right at 5 minutes. So let's get rolling into this next session. And we're exploring your HA and DR options for IBMI. Now, as both of us know, this is potentially a, what, I don't know how long of a topic. It could be a very long topic. We could talk all day about this topic, but we only have a short period of time here, and we'll do our best to cover it. Brian, what's your background with Fortra and the IBMI world?
Yeah, Tom. So I'm Brian Nordland. I'm the Associate Director of Development for IBM Power at Fortra. And I've been speaking on high availability and disaster recovery for IBMI for over a decade now. And have been named IBM Champion for IBM Power for the last 3 years. Before joining Fortra, I worked for IBM for a number of years where I did development work on the Power HA product.
Excellent. And for those who don't know, I'm one of our local or journal experts here at the Fortune company, and I use journaling way back on the system 38 days. So once you learn something like that in the School of Hard Knocks, you don't ever forget it. So I help a lot of customers through understanding how journaling works on IBMI, both local and remote journaling, and then also in how that impacts our product like Robot HA. So that's my background in this particular space. As we pointed out earlier, the IBMI Marketplace survey points out that high availability and disaster recovery is on the mind of everyone. And I think that you should always be evaluating and reviewing and testing what you're doing in this space. If you don't test your backups that you can restore them, or test your HA solutions, your disaster recovery solutions that you can do a roll swap or switch over and actually use them, do you really have a backup, or do you really have an HA disaster recovery solution? And the answer is no, you really don't, because if you can't use it when you need it, then what good is it?
Yeah, and Tom, one thing I also always like to talk about is that when you talk about cybersecurity, which of course is that top concern, there's an aspect of that which is around high availability and in particular disaster recovery. The best cybersecurity strategy, I think, focuses both on prevention of something, but also on recovery after an event occurs. Think, for example, something like an insider threat, a disgruntled system admin or something deleting your production library. What's your recovery strategy for a disaster such as that?
Got it. Very good. So let's talk kind of relatively quick about HADR today. Um, you know, but I like to start first with, are you asking the right questions? You know, and a lot of times when I work with customers, they really don't understand their own HADR backups. What are they doing? So we spend time talking about, what do you do daily? What do you do weekly? What do you do monthly? What do you do in nanoseconds if it's, data replication, right? And then, of course, what is your business recovery time objective? Is it, 5 minutes, 1 hour, 8 hours, 24 hours, 2 days? What kind of industry are you in? And really get to think about how core to your business is IBMI. And of course, what's your recovery point objective? If you had a failure, how far back do you have to go in order to restart your business, in other words? Or is it up to the second? Do you have a target site? What are you doing there? Is there something available where it's a cold system where you can go recover your system, restore your system, or is it a live system that you're targeting, or is it something up in the cloud? How often do you plan to roll swap? I know many customers roll swap every quarter and they run on their roll swap system. I know customers that do it once a year. I know customers who have HA and DR solutions that never do a roll swap, but yet their management think they're good, they're covered, and they're just running. It's kind of like knowing you have bad tires yet you continue to drive your car down the road on bad tires, just knowing someday in a bad rainstorm or bad ice storm, it's not very safe, right? Have you used journals in the past? What's your experience with that? And then, of course, what are your implementation thoughts? Can your team do it? Can your team implement the technology? Brian, any of your thoughts on this?
Tom, I think something else to keep in mind from our marketplace survey, we know that many of you are in some cases looking at cloud providers or are already using cloud providers or managed service providers. And even if you don't own the infrastructure, I think these are very important questions to ask your provider to understand who's responsible for these. Some providers may give you a system and leave HA and DR up to you. Others may take care of it for you. Now, another thing I'll mention is if they do say that they take care of it for you, it's always good to ask for specifics and details. What do they do? How is it tested? And try to poke holes in it to see what is maybe missed and what you may be responsible for. Because you might find that provider takes care of everything that you need for your business, but you might find that you need to supplement it with something else in addition.
Well, the other aspect, just yesterday, again, talking to a customer, they have somebody that's supposed to be keeping them current on their HA software, and they were actually 3 years behind the level of our software, right? That's not current. We've done a lot to the software in 3 years. So, Brian, first out of the gate is, what are your thoughts on logical based replication? What should people be thinking about?
I think one of the things to keep in mind is, as Tom mentioned a little bit earlier today, logical replication solutions are mature. They've been around a very long time. They're solutions that can work across any distance. They work with targets that are in the cloud. And it's also great because you can use your target for things like BI purposes if you want. Typically, it can also be pretty easy to sort of get up and going with one of these solutions. You kind of select what you want to replicate, and the solution will pick it up and push it to the other system. Now, I'll put a little disclaimer on that and say sometimes determining exactly what to replicate is something that seems like it should be easy, but it can take a little bit to get it exactly right to ensure that when you do have those role swaps that they're successful.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Tom.
Nope, go ahead.
I was going to say, where some challenges can come in is sometimes you can run into issues where what worked on the production system doesn't work on the target system for some reason or another. For example, maybe someone was using the backup for some BI purposes and they had something locked, and so that solution wasn't able to apply the changes. So you do sometimes have some monitoring and sort of care and feeding to keep your replication healthy.
Yep, that's a really good point. Again, go back to my call yesterday because I was doing an audit for them, and their backup system had website server jobs running that only should be running on their production system. So little things like that people do that get them in trouble because it had object locks and issues over there because that application was actually running on both systems. So the other thing I run into, Brian, quite a bit, and this is true for any of these solutions, is people have libraries on their system that they're not using anymore, and they're backing them up, they're doing HA against them. So we really need to clean up our systems too along the way.
That's a very good point, Tom.
What about FSR? What are your thoughts on this technology?
So FSR, or full system replication, is really a family of solutions that maybe on other platforms you might have heard it called something like VM level replication. And what it does is it relies on this, this idea or concept that the system, knows how to start up or boot up or IPL from storage. So if we took that storage and had an identical byte for byte copy of it somewhere else, that system can boot up from there. It is a level of technology that requires external or SAN storage. And something to keep in mind with something like this is you're replicating that storage, but your target system's powered off. So your switch to your DR site is really an IPL of your system. The advantage of this is it's typically pretty easy to get it set up, and everything for your system is replicated. You don't have to worry about something being missed or left out. It's also typically fairly easy to monitor because you're looking at the storage and the storage is saying, hey, it's replicating, or nope, there's some connection or communication issue between these. A disadvantage here, of course, is you don't have that active target system. So that means you can't use it for the BI purposes that we talked about in the logical replication solutions, or to check things. You also don't get any protection against operating system and software type outages. For example, when I go to upgrade, say, to IBM i 7.5, I need to take an outage for that entire upgrade window with this type of solution. Some instances, that can be a significant period of time. Or maybe I want to apply PTFs. Security PTFs are coming out pretty frequently these days, or security updates for software packages. If I want to reduce my downtime for those, I might want to apply those on my target system first, switch my users to it, and my only outage is how long it takes to switch. And then I can do it to my production system. And with full system replication, I can't, get that flexibility. And so that's where solutions like logical replication work well. Or if you want, sort of disk level replication, but some of the, advantages of logical replication, you can look at something like PowerHA. And so PowerHA is where we're taking this idea of hardware-based replication and we're isolating your business and your application data into a separate set of disk units called an Independent Auxiliary Storage Pool, or IASP, and replicating it. I like to think of an IASP similar to maybe a USB drive that I plug into my system. I can access some data. When I'm done, I can unplug it, plug it in somewhere else, and access it. It's a very, in some ways, a similar concept to that. Everything in that IASP is replicated. You're kind of doing that on a library by library basis with PowerHA. So when you create a library, you can say, I want this in the independent ASP, and then everything in there is replicated. Monitoring then is, again, fairly easy because you're looking at, is your replication going or isn't it? But the thing you have here is some upfront work to get into an independent ASP. There is some work to save your library and restore it in there, and in some cases test your applications in that sort of an environment. Something else to keep in mind, that target independent ASP, the system is active, so you can do things like operating system upgrades and so forth, but that independent ASP isn't, so you can't use it for BI purposes. One of the things we mentioned on here is PowerHA is a proven technology. It's been around for over 15 years now, and there are solutions within PowerHA. It's really a family of different replication things for internal storage, external storage, and even in cloud environments as well.
Yeah, that's something that people don't realize. You can use this technology with cloud. Very good. All right, Brian, so something newer in the market from IBM is DB2 Mirror. What are your thoughts on this technology?
So DB2 Mirror was introduced with IBM i 7.4, and it's in a class of solutions that are often referred to as active-active. And that means I have two systems that are running, and I can access my database really on both of them and make changes in real time that are synchronously made on both systems. So in this picture, we have where we can insert a record Fred into our database on node 1 on the left, and we're saying Fred is 24 years old. Node 2 on the right is getting the same record inserted as well. And so if I'm accessing node 2, it's almost as if I was accessing a single system, and these are getting made in both places. And a nice advantage here is this does work with different OS levels. So if it's implemented in the right way, you can make your OS upgrade and outages for that kind of a thing almost seamless to users. Notice I do say implemented in the right way. There's some work to get to that level of availability with this. There are some special hardware requirements though for this technology. You'll notice that in the middle it shows Rocky. That's a special type of adapter for enabling high-speed communication. And there's also distance limitations with this. You're typically talking about two systems within a single data center. And so because of that, you'll typically end up combining DB2Mir with some of the other technologies we've talked about, like logical replication or PowerHA, so that if you have some sort of regional outage, a storm comes through or whatever, you can have your system running in a different data center without having to, say, restore from backup and so forth.
Yeah, and that's, I think people use the word HA and DR kind of interchangeable, but reality, this kind of drives home, ultimately HA is active, but reality for most of us, because we're not using something like DB2Mir because of either cost or limitations, things like that, we're using one of the other technologies, and it's near active. We're usually having role swaps that are, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and realities it shouldn't be much longer than that. Some people certainly have hour role swaps, but those are more, kind of HA, right? Because you can get onto the technology rather quickly. Whereas then DR is really meant to be technology that's not in the same data center. It's in a different power grid. It's in a different location from a natural disaster standpoint. Anyways, I just thought it'd be good to add that on there, Brian. And then, of course, the nice thing about IBMI, you have options, and it's kind of like what matters to you. Budget certainly comes into play. Your IBMI knowledge can come into play here because you may need help implementing this technology. You don't have the knowledge that you need. What industry you're in, and what I mean by that is really ties in closely to the next, which is regulations. We have different industries, banking, just-in-time manufacturers that may be required to have high availability. And then, of course, who you're doing business with. Let's face it, your hardware reseller, yes, they're selling you IBM Power, but they're also selling you other add-ons, and they're selling you the ones that they represent and make money on. I mean, that's just the way the world is, right? So you got to ask all the right questions on cloud, and you got to understand what your staff is capable of doing. Brian, any of your thoughts on this?
I think you did a really good job of talking about this, Tom. And I think the key point is you do have options. So when that salesperson does say, "Hey, I have the best solution. It's the best solution for everyone," keep in mind that you probably want to at least look at other possibilities as well and find out, is it the best for me? And then the other thing I always like to keep in mind is that oftentimes you're combining different technologies and solutions. And we talked a lot today about, as Tom mentioned, high availability and real-time disaster recovery solutions where we're replicating data somewhere. There are also solutions like save and restore and so forth that are important to keep in place even if you have these. A lot of these solutions that do replication do a good job of replicating mistakes, like accidentally deleting something you didn't mean to delete. And so in those cases, you might have to go back to, say, a tape backup or something to restore what was accidentally deleted.
Great point. Great point. Well, that's all we have time today to talk about HA and DR. We want to thank you for joining us on this topic. And Brian, thanks for sharing your expertise. We're going to roll right into the next topic, which is why automation is trending upward on the IBMI marketplace study, and then how to get started with that. And Chuck and I are going to share our expertise there. So welcome back, Chuck. See you later, Brian. Great seeing you. Nice
Thanks
shirt,
for
by the
having
way.
me.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. So Chuck, you and I don't know that we necessarily need any introduction at this point in time. That's our mug shots. That's our videos. The IBMI marketplace survey says automation is a concern of yours, and we thought we should include it in today's next section and talk about what to do about it. So we have seen a steady increase in IT and business automation concerns on the marketplace survey over the last few years. A lot can be coupled in that, as Greg alluded to earlier in the kickoff, that it could be related to just automation of business processes. You may have heard of robotic process automation or enterprise scheduling or workload automation or business automation. Those things all play into what makes up this concern. And then we just talked about the retiring workforce. You add that in, and of course, we have a topic that we should talk about, which is why automation is trending. If we look at our survey results, again, one of the things we ask people is, do you run IBM I fully unattended after normal working hours, normal business hours? And each of us has to define that, and each of us can interpret this question a little bit differently. But the good news is nearly 70% of the market out there using IBM I runs their server unattended during what they consider to be kind of off hours, right? But 31% don't. So why is that? And that's what we're here to talk about. You may have reasons that it's trending to you that are different than these, but I think one of the main ones is staff members are retiring. And it's not just IT staff members, right? It could be a business user who was running a process manually that all of a sudden they're like, we're not going to replace that person. How can we automate that business process that they were doing at the end of the day? It was kind of manual anyways. We just didn't want to confront that staff member, and ruin their end of their career because they've been doing it for 25 years, but now we need to automate it. Just yesterday, old homegrown tools are outdated, and we don't have anybody to maintain them anymore. We got just enough developers to work on the actual business applications. We don't have time to work on system utilities. Of course, many companies are looking to automate business processes. How can I make the end user more productive? How can I get the process done sooner? And then, of course, we have the effect of RPA on the industry, robotic process automation. To me, it's always, I cringe, I chuckle. It's just really hard to believe this day and age when somebody asks me, well, the reason we're getting off IBM I is because it's such a manually labor-intensive system. And it's like, wow, why is that? Is Gartner saying things like that? Is Forrester saying things? Where are people hearing this from? Because my experience has been nothing but the difference is that IBM I can be as automated as you want it to be. The other thing we see is there are more MSPs that are monitoring customer systems for them, right? That means they're monitoring QSysOper and other things for you, but they're not automating. The automation responsibility is on you, the person who owns the business application. They might automate monitoring, but they don't automate dependency processing of various business processes and other things that are critical to your business. And then all of a sudden, it comes back to you, and you're like, well, I thought we outsourced IBM I, we have somebody monitoring the system. It's not one and the same. So let's talk about what the benefits are of automation, Chuck.
Yeah. So Tom and I put our heads together, and we came up with this list of 6 benefits. So first of all, the business value. That's really the ultimate goal here. Mm-hmm. Agility, the ability to give yourself the flexibility you need. Service improvements to your associated businesses, internal customers, external customers, and so forth. The ability to easily accommodate new technology, lowering downtime, and lowering costs. Those are our 6 categories. So let's look at those in a little bit more detail. I chuckle at this, Tom, because we talk to folks who give us this argument of why haven't you automated? We're too big to automate. We have staff. Why do we need to automate? Mm-hmm. Other roadblocks. People are pushing back against the automation. We've always done it this way, and so that's a roadblock that needs to be dealt with from a human resources and human relationships kind of a standpoint. No budget. We don't have any budget to automate. We're willing to pay for doing this manually and redoing it when there's mistakes.
Right.
You and I have the conversation around the comfort level, and that's really where education comes in, including what we're talking about today, All right, getting an understanding of what you need to focus on. Lack of tools, we can help with that. Automation being a priority, you know, we're so busy running the business. We think about how we don't think about how the business gets done. And if we thought more about that and you know, focus on automation, we'd be doing less firefighting. All right. Why haven't we automated? Maybe because we interface with so many other servers. You know, we have to wait for a process to get done over there before we can do one on IBMI. Well, there's ways you can handle that without an issue. You know, Tom, 20 years ago, we missed that one step.
Yeah.
And now there's a checklist item added, and it's been there for 20 years. And oh, by the way, you know, we're getting off IBMI.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest chuckle here because
why should we automate, right?
Yeah, why should we automate? We're getting off IBMI. Well, guess what? The automation project didn't happen, or it's been happening for 10 years and so forth.
Yep. Oh yeah. Just had one of those conversations not too long ago. So, you know, I also like to think of this in a positive light, right? And for me, it's always about, you know, what are some words of advice and things that can guide you along the way of automation? And I think about vision, having the vision of what would it be like. I always, you know, we check back with our customers after they've implemented automation and they go, gosh, why didn't we do this long before? You know, and it's because they didn't have the vision, right? The reality is, the other thing is the people who are doing are change agents. You're change agents, and you have to have passion for automation. Productivity. I don't know why, but I just, even at my home, whenever I'm doing anything, I'm always like, well, how can I get this done faster, right? How can I be more productive, so that I can enjoy life and not have to spend my time doing whatever, you know, buy a bigger lawnmower, for example, versus a small lawnmower. How can I get the lawn done faster, or hire it out if you really hate it? Metrics, right? How do you get metrics from a manually run um, system? You can't. And then, of course, working task, right? Keeping a list of what should be automated is sometimes the battle, especially as we get started. And then, you know, they're going to run into hurdles along the way. So sticking to it, driving through it, advancing it forward, getting the deployment done, being consistent. You know, we have people that will automate for a time and then they forget that they should readdress. And the next thing you know, 5 years later, they have a bunch of manual procedures again. And then the new manager coming in is going, why are we doing all these things manual? Oh, I get it. You're running an AS400, right? And that's why. And, you know, so, and then of course, availability. You know, with it, we provide availability. What about
Yeah.
the concept of increasing productivity, Chuck?
Well, yeah, let's look at some of the benefits. So increasing productivity with automation. There's limited human resources available both in IT as well as on the business side. So doing more with less is always a priority. Improving scalability. As your business increases, hopefully it's not stagnant, you're taking on more and more work. There's more happening on the system. You're able to scale up easily with automation. Working off hours, working those nights and weekends is not something anybody wants to do. So having 24/7 monitoring or automation coverage is certainly part of the equation. And then you can take that staff that was doing manual processing and get more value out of that staff by training them for additional responsibilities. I mentioned firefighting. You know, we're very good. Sometimes we even you know, advertise the fact that we're really good at firefighting. Well, that's not the right approach. So reducing the errors through automation by running things in order automatically, maybe, you know, oh, a step got forgotten. I had my finger on this step and I ran the other step. Greg Schmidt's going to talk about this on day 3, but report management, lost reports. So getting those into a automation system is important. Oh, I entered in the wrong date range. I just got busy. I called it, you know, we had somebody call in sick, and now somebody else comes in who really doesn't know the process, and mistakes are made. We've heard this over and over again, especially in the last 12 months. We want to reduce errors because people who don't understand the system have taken over the manual processing. Audits, let's look at that. All right. Auditing the business process as well as auditing things like security and so forth, it's part of our world now. So why not automate the process of providing audit data to the auditors? All right, as it says here, auditors love spreadsheets.
Right.
Well, it's very easy, especially if you're conscious of some of the new SQL access to system administration data. All right, so we can provide that type of data automatically with automated audit reports on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. So meeting those audit requirements just seems like a no-brainer to me, Tom.
Well, exactly. You know, I mean, there's a shortage of security professionals, and yet security professionals are doing so many things manually, and they can't. It's kind of like that constant firefighting thing, but in security, it's like it's constant audits. We're being re-audited again. We work for an industry that's being audited all the time. So
Yep.
it's just, use automation. So I've always said too that automation, if you're really good at it, it helps you deploy other technologies more rapidly because you don't have staff members running things manually for the old business, and you've integrated new jobs and applications into your schedule versus having to update the run book or update the Word document or the spreadsheet. And then you distribute things automatically to multiple servers from a central spot. So it's really good in regards to that. And of course, things like RPA. A lot of people are always like, RPA, well, how do we get started? How do we get started, right? I mean, it's about breaking things down into automatable chunks, and we'll talk about automation as something that's usually phased in, and we're going to hear more and more about how can AI and machine learning be applied to our automation projects or our deployment projects, and that'll hit us too. The other thing that I don't hear this as much anymore is meeting service level agreements, but I know they're out there. People need to measure and perform and meet standards, and the more things are automated, the easier it is to put rules around what your SLAs are for things like backups completing on time, critical jobs meeting their SLA. So gathering this information, if it's automated, it's usually in a database and it's extractable via typical BI, SQL, or just built-in documentation that's part of the solution that you have in place. So it should be much easier. So let's roll in and talk about what we think are some of those success items for automation. What makes you successful? And to me, one of the key concepts has always been management by exception. And again, you can apply this to cybersecurity, event logs, whatever else that you're doing out there to manage your systems. But more than 95% of the events that you're seeing from an admin operator perspective are probably not important. And so what you need to do is apply rules, filter those items out that are important, provide that single pane of glass so that you can answer the correct message or see the informational message that is important. There's older business applications on IBM, obviously, and some of those applications, they put nice to know messages. Hey, the ATM balance. Well, we have to have an operator because we got to look for that message on QSys Opera to do the next banking process. Well, no, you don't. There are automated tools that will monitor QSys Opera, monitor a message, and even monitor the same message ID for different values and then make different decisions. So to me, I always refer to this mantra as, really finding the needle in the haystack by applying management by exception to computer operations and computer processing. And again, you can apply this to business processes or IT processes, cybersecurity processes, whatever you have for events happening on the system, they got to be managed by exception. And another thing is automation at the source, right? I've seen the big monolithic automation tools that bring all the events up and then try to run things back. It just doesn't really work that well. In the IBM I world, for sure, what people have forgotten is that this server is a scale up server. It's like a mainframe in a way, and that there's a lot going on these servers. And so it's so hard to provide any kind of automation if you're trying to do everything centrally. So we've always pointed out that you should have rules on each server, each partition, each VM, whatever you want to call it, that build in that management by exception that we just talked about, with rules in place to help escalate things that are the exceptions to the central console versus sending everything up. You know, the rules need to be able to act independently too, because if the network goes down or whatever causes an outage, the server itself continues to run that line of business. And I've always kind of referred to this as making sure that the servers are independent. And independence is a good thing. It's just like raising children or grandchildren. It's really nice when they become self-sufficient and independent, right, Chuck?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so here's something that's near and dear to my heart because I'm working with some clients right now, helping them understand how to take their manual procedures in their run book and convert that into automation steps on the platform. And in some cases, the run book tends to be not just IBM I, but multi-platform. So understanding how to read through the run book and see the forest for the trees, so to speak, be able to find those steps or combined steps so that you can automate them. So look for those opportunities that are in the run book. Where do you start the project? Well, you know, typically people start with the daily processes, getting those automated, then they work into the weekly processes, monthly processes, quarterly processes, and so forth. They obviously look for low-hanging fruit and then work into the larger pieces that need to be dissected. So get rid of those mundane tasks that people are running every day just because they need to run the same thing at 4 o'clock every day. Typically, those are pretty easy to automate. And remember that it's a journey, it's not a destination. You're always looking for automation opportunities. Yep, and then looking for rules, okay? So Tom mentioned that up front, building in rules into your monitoring so that your monitoring can make decisions for you, all right? Automation at the source is part of that. So building granular rules to read, for instance, a message, a success message, do you really need to send that out? Well, not so much. The more rules you build in, the more flexibility. And also based on that rules automation comes better history, better reporting, better able to comply with those service level agreements. You know, like we say, all pools need rules.
Yeah, you know, and to pile on that a little bit, it's really about, you know, some people say, oh, I automated everything. Well, no, they didn't. They took one big CL that they had before that runs the entire night processing, and they put that into the job scheduler. That might help check the box, but reality, those things in that big CL need to be split up and they need to be made granular.
Yep. Exception-based notification. This is something we have always felt was a priority in order to accomplish the automation. You don't want to know about everything that ran right. You want to know about what hasn't run correctly, all right? And to direct those notifications to the correct group of people, whether it's operations or maybe your software developers, or maybe the business side needs to be notified. So notifying the right people, use various monitoring techniques to keep the schedule running. All right.
Yep.
So if you've got monitoring in place, then you can keep that schedule moving forward. Maybe even automatically answering a message or doing some sort of self-healing, self-recovery. A lot of discussions going on now about the correct protocol for doing notifications. Might even be interfacing with some kind of a REST API and escalating into something like a ServiceNow. All right.
Yeah.
So too much notification, too much white noise is not good.
Right. You know, and then of course, if you do have SLAs, you want to automate those. You know, have the the rules in place so that you get notified about your SLAs and that you're meeting your agreements that you set up. Eliminate manual checks where people are running through checkbooks or spreadsheets to check things off to say, yep, we made our SLA. That just seems so inefficient, you know. And reality is too, not all events are equal, of course, right? Some, I say that, you know, in every night processing, there's 10 problems areas that you need to really put your automation around from a notification SLA perspective. It's, you know, and it's one of those things, you know, you keep tweaking this, you know, if you don't succeed at first, you keep trying and try again, right? Automation, again, is a journey, as Chuck pointed out earlier. The other thing that I'm always surprised we don't see more and more of our IT professionals with automation as part of their job description, you know, building out an automation team, converting that day-to-day operator into an automation analyst. You know, to me, that tells your team that you're serious about automation. And, you know, I do a little sailing along the way, and I know Chuck does a little flying along the way. If you can't be the captain, if you don't have the hat type of scenario, you need to have that distinguished title of being in automation. The other thing is use your entire staff. Your operators or your people that have been doing things manually can be taught and trained on how to use the automation tools and or techniques to automate your systems. You know, basically my experience is those who end up deploying automation and becoming the ones who do it end up being your stars for IT, and use them in other areas. And so operators are a good resource that shouldn't be ignored as you go through this process. You know, I've always said you trust them at night to run your systems and be there when nobody else is around. You know, why can't you trust them and, you know, ultimately use all your golf clubs, not just, you know, your 7-iron because you know it's safe, right? So the other aspect of it is, if it sounds complicated, it is. And I've always asked people that let's rethink this. It just sounds way too complicated. There's got to be an easier way to do what you're trying to do. We've over the years, people sometimes build in dependencies that are really not dependencies, for example. And you know, Chuck talked about automating the low-hanging fruit. You know, start simple, show management some success early on. And you know, this is not about job security. I want to keep doing things the way I've always been doing them because of job security. Look, I mean, there's a shortage of IT professionals, and this is, you know, an area where it's only going to enhance your career by embracing this stuff. The other thing that I recommend people do is, you know, become a taskmaster. You know, keep a list of what we didn't automate in the first go around, and these are additional things, because business productivity is going to help you in competition with your competitors. Don't forget that that list is important. It's important to prioritize it, review it, and then break it down into sections that are automatable, and, you know, eliminate those impossible things. You know, you never really get hurt by having a honey-do list around, in my mind. So keep that honey-do list around and keep working it. I live my life with my to-do list in front of me every single day, and you have to in this area. So the other thing we want to do is, you know, educate your staff. Automation is not just the operator's issue or the network administrator's issue or the IT director's issue. It's really training your developers and your end users about automation and what you can do for them. Have you ever gone out into the community within the user community and said, are there things you guys are doing manually that we can automate for you? Do your developers, do they spend a lot of time writing unnecessary scripts to build in dependencies when you could just do that right in software and save them time in, you know, climbing the mountain, right? You got to have the proper footholds as you climb the mountain, and training the end users and developers is important when it comes to automation. So let's take a look at some of the key areas that we feel you should be able to automate, and some key technologies that we see that maybe are traditional roadblocks that we've seen from an automation stopgap, kind of thing, some software things to think about, and some hardware things to think about when we think about IBMI by itself, at least. So, traditional roadblocks that we've seen over the years are, of course, backups. Backups are always a hurdle for people. How do I run my restricted state backup unattended? Well, I'm here to say people do that. They run their full system backups, save option 21, totally unattended. Printing, automation of documents, automation of spool files. It used to be a bigger issue back in the day, but even today, people still have issues around printing and getting data or documents to people. Help desk at night. We got a help desk at night, so we might as well give them other things to do to justify them working at night, right? When reality, no, the priority is whatever reason you have behind that, they should be doing that. The network, we have to have somebody there because of the network, or we have this checklist, so we're going to use it. And then, of course, that age-old issue, we missed something once when we tried automation, and then management said we need to go back to what we were doing, which is a checklist. And then another area of concern is poorly written applications. Let's face it, there are some of you out there who have business applications that fail all the time, and so consequently, people have to be around to monitor those things. So, in that case, there you really need to gotta look at the quality of what you're running on your systems. So, and then software, of course, backups can be automated. There are enterprise scheduling solutions out there, of course. And Chuck's talked about monitoring QSys Opera. Gosh, we've been doing that since 1992 as a software package. And then we've added in enhancements to things like other resources over the years. Yet there's people that monitor QSys Opera manually every single day on IBMI. I guess I didn't talk enough about enterprise scheduling. Certainly you can incorporate IBMI with processes on Windows, Unix, and Linux and provide that. Automated backups, even restricted states should be automated. They've been automated. You should be able to do any kind of thing you want around restricted state type activity. And even high availability shouldn't cause you to have manual processes. You should be looking at automating your role swaps and having those things happen as automated as possible, right? I mean, we don't want to necessarily just switch over automatically. In most cases, we want to maybe have a now push the button and let's do the switch over. And then, of course, we need to document things along the way. Chuck, what about some hardware automation opportunities?
Yeah, we talk about automating backups. Well, we've been working with VTLs or virtual tape libraries to help people automate their backups for, Tom, I think it's almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And it's a technology that is certainly being adopted. So taking away that requirement to manually load and swap tapes, and likewise to get those tapes off-site. There's easy methods for replicating that data off-site VTLs to keep your data safe. Of course, there is the traditional tape swapping or AMLs that are available from IBM and elsewhere for manually or for automating what was a manual tape swap. Of course, I still would vote for a VTL. And Tom, you've been doing a lot of work on the cloud backup side.
Yeah, and there are cloud backup solutions out there, but I think more of what I've been doing is, data replication across VM to VM or partition to partition, and then using virtual tape libraries as the backups in those scenarios. Even the virtual tape libraries do offer, as you know, the ability to replicate from one site to another. So you could do your backups in Minneapolis and replicate your data via the VTL to the Houston office. That's a form of replication. It's still a point in time backup, but that's certainly. And then another thing people do a lot of too that we should really have on here is flash copy. With IBMI storage, you can do flash copy. There are of course other storage out there, EMC of course, and people do use that. So there you go. Oh, you're changing it as we go. I like it.
There you go. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about how to reach that automation goal and how to start your journey. The technology that launched our company many years ago now was a product called Robot, and that was all about job scheduling, automating your batch processes. And the technology over the years has been enhanced, for instance, with interfaces to popular ERP applications, the Oracle JDE Enterprise One and SAP interface, automating interactive processes with Robot Replay and incorporating that into your batch job stream. And then likewise, often there's dependencies outside of IBMI, often the Linux, AIX, Windows world, maybe there's some FTP processes that need to happen and we need to incorporate those as a dependency. So the Robot Schedule tool can manage all that and give you all that in a nice graphical interface as well.
You know, and then a few years ago, the Fortran company, we acquired a Windows automation tool that fits really nicely in the robotic automation space, and Automate can be integrated with the Robot solution. Now we can do some things that Robot can't do, but we can integrate the two. So for instance, Automate can go out and check an email box, grab a file, read that file like a spreadsheet line by line, and even poke a 5250 screen. Automate technically is a standalone product. You don't have to have Robot for it, but it can be used to run green screens. It can be used to run browsers. So it too fits a nice role into this automation space, or business process automation, because a lot of things have Windows type interfaces. So anything you would add to Automate story, Chuck?
Well, I would add that we can have a dependency between an Automate process and a Robot Schedule task.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And then what about Robot Console?
Yeah, let's talk Robot Console. So Robot Console got its name from the old system console days, where you had a person sitting in front of a dumb terminal waiting to intercept a message, and hopefully they saw it and responded to it correctly. And oh, by the way, it happened at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and oh, sorry, I missed that message, and things got messed up. So the idea is to automate that process of manually monitoring system console messages. That's where console got its name from. So the tool was originally designed for monitoring QSysOper, but we've been talking all along here about different logs that need to be monitored, such as the history log, QHIST. And likewise, operators oftentimes are required to go out there and look to see that certain jobs are active, certain subsystems are active, job queues are released, job queues aren't backed up. So incorporating all that into your automation process is really, I think, a baseline, Tom, for accomplishing your automation goal. And then escalating through Robot Alert, notifying the responsible parties, interested parties, that you could have an issue or an exception, right? Exception notification.
Very good. Yeah. And then, HA. Why do I put HA into the automation topic? Because there's so many people that are using HA type, DR type solutions that they're doing manual things with it. The automation piece of it should be automatic. The fact that somebody added a physical file to a library should automatically get journaled. The cleanup of the journals, remote and local, should be automated. The use of Q audit journal within replication should be automated and preserved in some cases, so that we're not overlaying it. And then even things like schedule entries and web definitions and triggers and constraints and some of the more advanced topics should also be automatically replicated for you in the automation space. So using tools like Robot Console, the Halcyon solution, or even Robot Agent itself to monitor itself, you can do all those things. It shouldn't be manual. You should not have to manually monitor your HA solution. If you are, let's talk. Let's talk about automating.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that.
Yeah, so one of the things that has really revolutionized monitoring in our robot product line is this technology called Robot Monitor, because it's not just a system monitor, it's also an application as well as a performance monitor. So oftentimes we're asked to look at things in a very granular fashion, maybe even down to the contents of data in a file. All right, so being able to do things like that and automate it using this technology called Robot Monitor, and doing that in almost real time. Every 30 seconds we can go out and monitor that type of technology. And then we're not just IBMI, we're also possibly Linux on Power, AIX on Power, VIOS on Power. Those technologies need to be monitored as well. So we offer you the choice of both dashboard presentation as well as integrating into Robot Alert and Robot Console to do external notification.
You know, and another area that I consider to be automation, and Greg's going to talk about it later, is document automation. So many of us are, you know, scanning documents in, distributing documents, downloading spreadsheets, doing a lot of these things manually that can be done. We've helped customers automate accounts payable departments, accounts receivable, HR, and that whole automation area is also fits into the topic of modernization, right? I mean, and Greg will do an awesome job of explaining what that all should mean to you for that. But anything, I mean, I often say automating security documents, right? How do you go back in time and share what Q Audit Journal looked like, for example, from a year ago if auditors ask? I mean, things like that for forensics reasons. A good document automation solution for spool files and actual documents is a great thing. So we know it's a journey. Automation's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. And it's kind of one of those things, you know, when we just look at this from just a pure scheduling perspective, people often get very intimidated because you know, they think, oh my gosh, I have to do this over time, right? And you have to phase it in. But we know it's achievable. We have a lot of people that run IBMI unattended or AS400 if you inherited that. IBMI was, you know, originally sold as an operator-less system. Really, the AS400 was when it came out. That was one of the original slogans behind it. It's an operator-less system. You don't need operators to run it. You don't really need a lot of administrators to run it. And those are really some of the business values behind the IBMI platform itself. So it is something that should be able to be a lower cost of total cost of ownership when it comes to the operations and the administration of it. If not for you, then you need to look at it and evaluate what is your team doing manually on the platform. So, wow, covered a lot today. You know, we went through the topic of retirement and inheriting IBMI or AS400, and now what? We talked about HA and DR, and now we wrapped it up with automation. One of our people listening in and commented is, wow, my head's spinning here after just this first day of the agenda for IBMI Education Week from Fortra. Tomorrow we have Sandy and Amy. They're going to dive deeper into the cybersecurity topic. Those two, they've been talking to customers like Chuck and I in the automation for years, and they've done a lot of hands-on. So we hope you can join us again tomorrow for that session. Chuck, we have a few questions out there, or any comments from the Q&A that's out in the chat. I haven't been able to look at that.
Yeah, I've been tracking some of the questions and comments, and yeah, I agree with the whole head spinning thing. You know, we will be sharing out the slide deck and the recording, so you know, the laundry list of things that you really need to kind of think about will be there. Questions or comments about, you know, some of our other technologies for monitoring and automation outside of Robot? Yes, we definitely have other brands like, you know, Halcyon, for instance, and they all have their place in there.
Very strategic brand for us, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Fortra company, Chuck, you know, think about it too. We work on BRMS and Power HA for IBM. Those things compete with Robot Save and Robot HA, but you know, there's a place for all these things. The beauty of it as a customer of the IBMI platform is you have options to use different things.
Yes, absolutely. And it does drive home the point too about using a commercial solution versus roll your own. Homegrown tools have their place, but in the long run, you're much better off with a commercial solution because you always have somebody to call. The person who created that homegrown tool may be long gone.
All right, with that, we thank you for sticking around with us for almost 120 minutes. Some of you probably have been because you were on before we started. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you tomorrow on the cybersecurity session. Thank you
Thanks,
so
everybody.
much.
Bye-bye.